Welcome to the Business of Wholesaling. I'm your host, Drew Carroll, and I'm here today with Al Nicoletti. He is the probate king of Florida. It's my pleasure to have him on to answer all kinds of probate questions that I have, and I'm assuming that everybody listening will have too. Al, thank you so much for coming on today.
Drew, thank you for having me. And it's always good seeing you and talking to you and conversing about real estate and diving into things, man.
Yeah, I'm totally pumped. I've been looking forward to this this morning when I got my little agenda, what I had coming up today, and I saw you were on this afternoon. I was very excited, and then my assistant even messaged me earlier, going, "I was all excited." I don't know if you'd emailed her or something, but she gave me some info and whatnot, and mentioned you're excited. So it's very
Yeah.
exciting to have you.
Yeah, same, man. Same. Absolutely.
So I want to jump in kind of in some meat, and then we'll backtrack a little bit and hear a little bit more about your story. But I want to start this with answering the big question that a lot of people might have, which is, what is probate and why do real estate investors care?
Yeah, great question. I get a lot of this when I have intro calls with investors. I'm meeting new investors at meetups or speaking, and a lot of people have heard about it. They hear that it's the gold mine, the one that's going to get the biggest spreads, and that's the first question. So really, what it is just boils down to you found a piece of property and you lock it up under contract with somebody you think is the owner or maybe an heir, and you then take the contract, you bring it to the title company, you open up escrow, and the title company is going to say, hey, we got to do probate for this. You're like, what's probate? Well, what probate is doing is you find out that somebody owned that property, they died. To get it out of their name, us lawyers were filing paperwork, we're putting everything together, who the person is that died, who the beneficiaries are, what the asset is, the house. Sometimes there's lots, multiple land, and we're laying everything in the record. And once we put everything together, we're filing it in court. And what we're essentially doing is declaring the heirs and moving the title over. That's really what probate's doing. We tell who the parties are, and now we're shifting the title to who the real heirs are. Now, now that that's done, because eventually we get court orders, now the heirs can sell it, do whatever they want with the property, and probate's done. So that's the basic idea of it. And why do investors really need to know about it? First of all, there's so many great things to talk about with probate. Some of the biggest spreads you'll see, I've had investors I've worked with that have made anywhere between $20,000 to $200,000 in spreads. I mean, I had one guy on the show talk about it. I mean, it was crazy. Two, a lot of investors don't want to go after it, or they find out they need to do it, and then they don't find out that they have the right expert to help them.
Hmm.
And that's where, when I jumped really into this in 2018, 2019 in the Jacksonville market, it really changed a lot of people's mindset, because it was like, well, wait a second. We didn't have the expert before. Now we do. And now it can solve so many, it unlocks so many potential deals.
Yeah.
And I really talk about this, Drew. The more we go on into the years of 2025, 2030, 2035, 2040, you're going to see so many more of these come up in your deals on the inbound side, outbound side. You're going to see so many more. And you need to know about it and be able to overcome these challenges now, because these are just going to happen more and more. And investors are telling me this all the time.
Huh. So why is probate the holy grail in terms of assignment fees? We'll break down the good, and then I want to kind of talk about the difficulties of it. But why is it the holy grail? Like, why are you seeing like six-figure assignment fees and things like that?
So I think a lot of it is the people that own the property, they're just so disconnected from it. So we'll start on the land side. Land's an easy one because there's no property, there's no attachment. And a lot of these people bought property back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And this is usually the story. They bought the lot because what they wanted to do was hope that their family would build a house and move to Florida one
Right.
day. right? And so we get that same story again and again. What happens is they don't move. They eventually didn't tell their family they owned a lot there, and they died. And now all of a sudden, investors are finding these lots, you know, in these different areas, and they're worth a lot because some of these areas are having big population booms, big growth. And I'm talking about the Lee County area, the Charlotte County area, the Sarasota area, the Jacksonville market, where a lot of people ended up moving to, and there was a lot of builds, and you have like a lot of houses and then lots and then houses and lots. And for a lot of the land people, when they see that, it's like huge opportunity because
Mhm.
builders want to come in and keep building in that community. So those lots become valuable because of the growth population, because of the houses that continually get to be built. On the single family side, you have tons of people that own residences, their primary residence. It's not usually just a vacation house, it's where they lived and resided, or it is vacation homes. And in Florida, when they live, they reside in that property and they die, or it's a vacation home and it's in their name, they die, it needs probate. And a lot of these areas are just really hot right now. And anytime you get probate, it really means distressed. Somebody lived there, somebody owned that property, whether it's the lot and it's super overgrown because nobody's taking care of it, nobody's paid taxes, or it's the house and nobody took care of the roof and the pool. The properties are distressed. And so, because if you combine the lack of attachment from these heirs plus the distress side, investors are able to lock these properties up under a really good price. They're either able to take them down themselves and do the fix and flip and then eventually list it, or keep it as an Airbnb or long-term hold, or they're wholesaling it out to somebody that's going to be able to do it. And the margins are just really good. Some of these heirs, Drew, they don't want to pay the taxes anymore. They're tired of it. They've done it for years. They're tired of paying the mortgage. They're tired of feeling obligated. They're tired of investors calling them. They're
Yeah.
tired of getting letters in the mail. And I just think it's a culmination of all these factors that make that niche just so lucrative because of the price point. The distress, the price point, and the lack of attachment, I think just makes it a great niche. And we're just seeing so much of it.
Would it be fair to say as well that these heirs are also stuck in this situation where they're not maybe entirely sure how to get rid of this because again it's a probate, it's not technically in their name, so is there a potentiality where they've tried to do something with the property, ran into a roadblock because it's still in their mother's name or whoever it might be, and so they're just like, I don't want to deal with this aside from this being in another state and I'm paying all these taxes, now you're telling me I got to do all this paperwork and I just don't want to deal with it. Is that a truity in these cases as well?
Yeah, and you kind of hit a little bit of the origin story of how this all started.
Hmm.
Because when I was first getting into this, I was trying to figure out like what was the selling point behind this? What was the in here? And what happens when a lot of people go to these lawyers? The lawyers are like, "Hey, we need the money up front, right? We need to be paid up front because we got to get this probate done." And a lot of the heirs, they don't have the money to spend to take care of this issue. So on the lawyer side, we had to think creatively, like what's a good way to get in on this? Well, if somebody's going to buy it and there's going to be a sale, there's going to be a transaction. And so if there's going to be a transaction, why not just wait until the closing for the attorney's fees off the HUD? And so that way the heirs aren't paying anything up front. They don't have to take any risk. The investor or the buyer doesn't have to take any risk, and everybody can move through the probate, close on the transaction. So on the legal side, that's the beautiful side of what we do,
Yeah.
is we're able to offer that to the heirs. So that's a giant thing off their table right now, right? If you can wait till the closing for the fees and costs, boom, it's huge. Now, another thing is the fact that we're able to, a lot of the ways that we work specifically is doing things electronically, virtually. You know, as a business, I think now you really have to leverage the virtual world more than ever with DocuSign, Adobe, Notarize, because a lot of people don't want to go anywhere. And these heirs, they get all excited when you say, "Hey, can you use DocuSign?" They're like, "Yeah, absolutely." Can you use on, do you have a computer with a webcam so we could do notarize.com? Oh, yeah, no problem. Can you print out a PDF? Sure. When you're able to offer the ability to do these things and make it easy for them, or some of these title companies offer mobile notaries or being able to provide services, makes it effortless. So there's a combination of the structure on the legal side that has really helped, plus leveraging the virtual software world, which has alleviated so much of the stress for a lot of these heirs.
That's incredible. So like I'm already thinking like this just seems like such a no-brainer. Like if I were in Florida, I know you, so I know that I'm going to target probate in any way that I can. And literally that is going to be my pitch. Is like, hey, I want to buy your house for cash. I want to take it out of your hands. Listen, I know that it's a headache right now. It's not in your name. I'm really sorry to hear that whoever passed, but I can also help you through this whole paperwork. We can look after everything. It's a complete white glove service. I'm going to have my lawyers reach out, not a penny out of your pocket. It'll only be money into your pocket once this whole thing closes. Like, it sounds like a perfect lay down pitch to me.
It absolutely works every single time. I mean, when I have intro calls with investors that are in the Florida market that are doing these high volume deals or picking up these deals, as soon as I explain, hey, just so you know, we wait till closing to get paid on this, it's a massive selling point for everyone because now probate has always been the roadblock for any investor or realtor or anybody that's trying to do these deals because as soon as they hear that, they think lawyer, money up front, it's going to be a headache. And so that's helped a lot too. And we can touch on timing, which has actually been one of the most mind-blowing aspects of probate that we've been able to solve, because everybody thought that this kind of process would take 9 to 12 months. Like we get this, yeah, yeah.
So that's interesting. So I just had a buddy now. He's in Texas, and I know you'll speak to Florida, but he was in Texas, and he literally said this deal because we were talking about it. It was all exciting, and then he literally texted me just be like, "Deal's dead. Moving on. It's in probate." And I was just like, "Probate equals dead." Like I don't like that. I feel like there's probably more to this equation, but that was his point. It was just like I don't want to chase this for 12 months. Let's just move on to the next deal. So yeah, please tell me about the timeline because I thought even this whole time knowing you that was just the reality of the situation is that it's going to take time and whatever deals are going to die over time.
Yeah, and we get that a lot, right? We hear the same thing, like they hear probate, they think, oh, we're done, we're not gonna be able to do this, or it's gonna be, how long is this gonna be? You know, Drew, a lot of these, I'd say about what, 80 to 90% of the probates that come up, whether it's land, single family homes, something like that, we're seeing a lot of these probates take a matter of like 4 to 10 weeks.
Wow.
Right? Like, and people have always heard probate, like pre-Al, pre-2018, 2017, like everybody's like, oh, we're not going to do the deal because the last experience I had took a year to 2 years, right? And there's some investors that email us and they get paranoid because they're like, the last one we had was 9 months. If you have everybody on the same page, right? There's a land deal, a single family home. It was in dad's name. There's no will, there's no surviving spouse, and you got the 4 kids of ever, and they're all on the same page and they all signed your contract. And and that's it. What are we doing here? We're looking
Yeah.
at a very straightforward timeline. And you know, each county is going to be different. Like there's different counties in Florida. Each county is going to be different in time frame, but in general, you're not talking that time frame. You're talking a matter of weeks, maybe a couple months at max if you have everybody, which is totally mind-blowing for people.
Yeah. Interesting. So now is this just because you live in Florida thing, or this is like if you have a refined process and somebody who knows what they're doing like yourself, like this is what most people should expect for probate even outside of Florida? Or is it specific to what you do?
Specific to what I do, however, there are probably other states that are probably as fast. I don't know them myself.
Yeah.
And I've really, one thing I've done, Drew, over going to all the events in Houston, Milwaukee, and everywhere, like I've always tried to connect with other investors that know attorneys in other states that are really good. And
Yeah.
like I have a handful, but I don't have them all. And I can tell you that some states are probably easier than others. I've heard California is like takes a really long time, right? Like, I remember sitting down with Ryalis Dana. He's in Arizona. He's a probate lawyer there. And Ryalis was telling me, like, yeah, the probates in Arizona can be either quick or take a little while, but he was like, nothing like California. Like that takes a long time there. I
Wow.
I know. I was like, not like Florida. Florida's like, let's go. We can do this.
Yeah. So so it paints a pretty good like to me, like this just makes total sense. Like why this is a hot niche and like why investors should be looking at this and looking like if they're in Florida, connecting with somebody like you or in a state, like finding that probate attorney that knows what the heck they're doing and just double down on it, knowing that this is kind of like this holy grail. But what about the ugly of it? Like, I'm going to be honest, right? There's going to be people listening. There's people I know who have tried to navigate probate by themselves or have maybe tried to do it on the quick and dirty and got themselves stuck somewhere. So
Mhm.
what would you say to warn people who are like they're in a probate deal and they think that like, oh, they've Googled it and they think they know how to just kind of like deal with some of it themselves? Like what are some of the traps and things people should be looking for and why should they work with a professional?
Oh, I mean, there's so many reasons why. I mean, first of all, you're getting into paperwork that gets really complicated. Like a lot of this stuff has to be done the right way. I mean, everything's got to be done the right way for the courthouse. Um, that's first, and every jurisdiction is going to be so different with their requirements. But the sticky of it ends up being number one, you got to make sure you have the right heirs because you don't want somebody coming back later and trying to make a claim and saying, "Hey, I was left out of this," or I'm another son and I wasn't included." Like a lot of times people think that it's only just one kid or the oldest kid. It's like, no, 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 no. Like there's a whole line of questioning that you have to get through that we do on our side that we have to ask these right questions. I talk about it in presentations because it actually helps investors when they're like, "Hey, I got
Right.
a probate. Hey, by the way, is there a spouse? How many kids ever? Is there a will?" Like, there's certain questions, and the really sticky of it is, and it's funny you brought that up because there was a case that we were about to just do where the investor picked up it was a land deal. It's a probate, and everybody thought it was just the brother and the sister.
Yeah.
Well, Al knows a lot about like I hear that I'm like, well, is it just them, right? Like, put an asterisk on that. I have the consult. Of course, we find out that there may be a child, right? And I'm like, well, before we get to brother and sister, who's this child, right?
Yeah.
We talk to the child, find out there's no relation there, ended up being adopted out, whatever. But from that conversation, we found out there was mom. And mom died after the one that owned the property. And so it's like, wait a second, we can't even get to the siblings. We got to go now to mom. And then where's mom? And then we find out mom died after. Well, what's her story? And then, the sticky of it ends up being this web, right? And this is where the challenges come in with some of these probates, that it's not just the four kids under contract, that it ends up being you have to find this one and this one and this one and this one. And I've been on consults, Drew, where they tell you, oh, it's just me. And then I really ask them the questions like it's in a Beetlejuice method. And then all of a sudden there's seven kids, seven
Right.
kids. Like, where'd seven come from? And I think that's the sticky of it is that there could be a lot more different people that you have to find, that you have to locate, that you have to skip trace. That's why you got to have a really good skip tracing software. That's why you got to have really good experts you can lean on and find these people, because these are people that are going to have to be included in the probate. They're going to have to be included in your contract and with the title company. And if you can't find them, it almost makes it in a stuck situation. Like, what now? It gets really crazy, and you're not going to be able to get that deal 100%. So that's where it gets really crazy. Find the experts out there that can really find heirs and locate people, locate the nephew if you get that far, locate people. I have a great friend, Stephanie Shepard. She does a lot of breaking down family trees and skip tracing for people, and she breaks down like really deep family trees. And we've gotten to ones where people thought there were no heirs, and she found a cousin. She found all these cousins. Like, this is probate, like, you're gonna find people. There's gonna be other heirs that you don't realize. Expect the unexpected, but just know that with these challenges come the big spreads that we talked about in the beginning, because who's going after it, Drew? If Right, like if 10 people come across it and don't want to solve it, that's an opportunity for you.
If you're willing to solve problems that nobody else is willing to solve, then that the reward is there. So that's so interesting. I never realized how deep it really was. Like, I probably, luckily, I'm not in charge of that part of anything, but I would just be like, oh, you're the heir, just sign right here, no problem. Let's go. Let's take it to title. So that's very, very interesting. So what would you say? I guess I've got two questions here. So what would you say is important for the wholesalers or the real estate investors to be asking to prod to figure out if it's worth going and hiring somebody like you to proceed through probate?
100% qualifying, right? It's, investors qualify their leads all the time, right? It's no different with probate leads. And this is something I've been really talking about with a lot of investors, is that once you hear or get the inkling that it's going to need probate, title company says it, you're pretty confident it does because of the way the title is. Once you hear that, you have to ask some basic questions, because if the heirs participate in this, they're serious and really helping and moving forward with this, right? Do you have the death certificate? Because without that, we can't do probate. We got to lay the record. That's got to be there. Where's the death certificate, right? Also, is there a will? And if there is, where is it? You
Right.
know, that you can't just say there is. Oh, I think they had one. Where is it? If there's a will, who does the will leave it to? Are there other people that you don't know about? Because they may be telling you it's just them, but on the will it says it's leaving it to 5 different people. So we got to know these things. Also, sometimes the will leaves it to a trust. These documents end up being very important, because who's going to need it? The lawyer's going to need it, and the title underwriter for the transaction, they always require. Just had an email the other day. They said, "Hey Al, can you send a copy of the will?" And then second email, "Oh, by the way, I see it's leaving it to a trust. Where's the trust?" It's not just us that needs it, it's everybody in the whole transaction. So it becomes vital. Asking those things. Also, are they aware of any looming sensitive time situations, right? I don't consider a pre-foreclosure or tax delinquent time sensitive. I consider it's up for auction in 4 weeks, or up for auction on the tax deed or foreclosure block in 5 weeks. Like, that's time sensitive, right?
Yeah.
You're going to find tons of pre-foreclosures and tax delinquents. Of course, it's in its way, it's time sensitive, but do they know about anything? Because, we got to know. And is it in that state? Have they received any documents like they're in default, or are they getting notices from the county? Got to ask those things, because anytime you hear probate, you got to think distress, and you got to think there's a reason it's in probate, or we got to do one
Right.
because somebody owned it, and maybe somebody's not keeping up with the payments, somebody's not keeping up with the property. That's it. The checklist is definitely going to be big. The other thing that you want to also do, Drew, is make sure you're lined up with a great title company that understands how to work these transactions, that understands that you got to get all the paperwork together. It's going to be numerous heirs. That's also really important. Yeah.
How would you go about doing that if you had to go find a new title company? and this is, you were going to start working with probate as an investor, how would you go qualify that title company? And I'll ask you to answer the same question again for a lawyer.
Yeah, I know the lawyer answer. It's going to be basically the same when you're really working with a title company. How often do they work with investors, right?
Right.
If they primarily work with investors, they get creative, right?
Mm,
What percentage of their deals are really messy, right? Do they get messy transactions? Because if they're working with the messy, they've seen a lot, they've been through it, that they've absolutely have an idea of how to tackle it. And then just being communicative with them, right? The good title companies, they're going to have really good communication and be able to handle a lot on their end. Also, you want to try to see if you can get good recommendations from other investors that have had a good experience with them as well. If they're having good experience with the title companies, that's a huge positive. Because what ends up happening? Some title companies blow up, they get really busy, and then the wheels fall off, or it's
yeah.
just they get no communication. On the lawyer side, it's really no different on the percentages, right? I really break it down to percentages. If you're in another state, let's just say you're in Arkansas or Oklahoma, or you're in another state and you want to find an out in that state, what percentage of your practice is probate?
Interesting.
If you ask me that, Drew, my answer would be 95% to
Right.
basically 100. Like, that's really my practice. If you ask a lawyer and they say 30%, it's like, well, what else do they do? And are they going to treat the file with priority? Are they going to understand how to go through probate? Like, I have I have not seen everything, but I have seen so much that I see the same and similar scenarios over and over. So I feel comfortable. I'm like, yep, been there before. This is what we do. Been there before. If your practice is 25 to 30, have you seen a lot to know how to tackle a really messy situation? Also, how often do they work with investors? How
Mm,
often do they work with really good title companies? Sometimes, so I'm not a title company. I don't close the deals. I like my role only because it makes it a specialist in that niche.
yep.
The thing is that sometimes there's probate lawyers that see probate, and then there's probate lawyers that see probate and title. I see how the deal gets closed on the back end, not just on the front end of doing the probate. So you really want to find a lawyer that sees the probate side, and what about the title side on the back end? That we see all the time. That's really important because that's how I view deals, right? That's
Yep.
that's how I view it. Um, Another thing is go to your local RIAs, go to your local meetups, go to your local, oh my gosh, Facebook groups right now are really hot for this. Like, go to your Facebook group and say, like, hey, I'm starting to pick up a whole bunch of these crazy probates in Michigan right now. And does anybody have a really good recommendation for this? Or does anybody have a good recommendation for this? We need to move this along. I'll tell you, those are great resources for people.
Yeah.
I see it all the time. And I think that's the way to do it. And of course, what's the best recommendation when it's already coming from somebody that already knows a lawyer in that state? That's
Right.
definitely the best.
It speaks so true. Like, I love what you're saying about, like, asking about their percentages and stuff. So I just fell into this problem, not with probate, but I think it's a worthwhile to tell this story for everybody listening. I live in Canada. I'm a Canadian resident. I own an American company. So when we started the company, we had a CPA. I told him I'm from Toronto, and he's just like, oh yeah, we know a way that it's like it's all fine and how to like flow the money up and it's good for taxes and everything's great. I never once asked them a question about how often they do this or anything like that. Bless their hearts, they did a great job for everything American side, but they set me up for a ton of exposure on the Canadian side. I've just got audited for the last 2 years and found a lot of issues in the way like distributions were sent, for example.
Mhm.
It wasn't done properly, basically over the border. So I've had to go find a new CPA who specializes in Canadians who own companies in America. And that's it. That's what they do. And my gosh, I don't even think we were 45 minutes on a call together. I've never felt so good in my life. And it was simply because that CPA was up to date with current trends and up to date with like current filings and things like that, where he was just like, yeah, I can see exactly what the other CPA was trying to do, all well intended, but it just like that was something that worked 8 years ago. It's not something that's up to date now. So in probate, I would imagine the same. I could see going to a lawyer and them saying, oh yeah, we do probate because they've done a few deals and they get it or whatever it is. And then you get into something messy like you're saying, and they go, oh, I don't know. And they've never dealt with a wholesaler or an investor. So then they're also just have no interest in getting creative. And so they're just like, I don't know, move on with it. Right. And so they don't understand your business. And that can cause a ton of friction.
Yeah, and like just like you went through, like in the beginning, you didn't know who that was gonna be, and then
Yeah.
you had to really think through who am I looking for, and you
Yes.
found it, right? It's no different on our side, right? Who do I need to go to that knows this inside and out? You know, who's the specialist in this area? Like if somebody said, "Hey, Al, I got this bankruptcy situation." Nope, nope,
Right.
not don't ask me that question. Somebody asked me today about there's somebody did a seller finance and they're not making the payments and they want to foreclose. I'm good. Don't ask. I don't want to get into
Right.
that because on a business side, I've been able to scale the probate because I know how to go high volume with it. I know the system. I have my processes dialed in and I understand a lot of the nuances that come with it. I start doing all these other things, it takes it away from the people that really need it. And people are coming to me for all of these probates in Florida because they know this is what I do. This is what I get into. So, you know, back in 2020, Drew, it's crazy. Like talk about business. Back in 2020, I didn't have my own law firm yet, but I was really starting to pick up a lot more probates that came in because I did a class, I did this, and all of a sudden Al's crushing it. And once the pandemic hit, I had to really make a decision. Do I pick some eviction stuff up, pick some of the weird stuff up, or do I go harder into probate? Do I go deeper into probate? And I remember I made that decision in that April and May, and I was like, we're going deeper into probate. And that was the best decision ever because from that decision, I was able to then a year later open up my own law firm, have my own practice, have my own team, grow my team, and be self-sustainable. And since then, now a team of 9 members. It's nuts.
Incredible. And a word to everybody listening, the power of really focusing on your superpower. Um, tell me about prior to this, because I know Al as like 2020 forward Al, right? You were the probate guy. But like, how did you get into law in the first place? I'm sure you weren't 16 and you were just like, you know what? Probate. That's the thing. So what brought you into law? And then you've touched on it a few times, but then how did it end up transitioning directly into probate?
Yeah, didn't even think about law or probate at 16.
Really? Not even lie, not even in high
No,
school?
no, no, not at all. So back in high school, I played violin. I was a violinist for 15 years. I was music, music, music. That was my life. And I don't know, I got to a point where I kind of started realizing in college that music wasn't going to be the thing that gets me to the thing,
And,
right? Like
and what were you in college for music?
yes, I
Okay.
was in college for music. I went to University of Miami, music scholarship for music, and it was crazy. Like I thought maybe it was going to be music, but it wasn't, music. And I said, maybe what I want to do is see what else is out there, right? Like maybe I want to try pre-med or maybe go to pre-law. So I remember I started taking those classes and I don't know, just something about getting in. I thought, oh, I'm gonna do law, but then I'm gonna take my music background, maybe do entertainment law, something crazy like that, some crazy harebrained idea
Yeah.
that didn't really pan out because that was a whole other another course and stuff that I had to do. And I just said, you know what? Really, I give credit to mom. Mom was like, you need to apply, get into school, get into law school. I
Yeah.
listen to mom. I did it, got in, and I had no idea what to expect, Drew. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, at that point, it was always music for me. And so I think what was so interesting is my whole life was music. And then all of a sudden I'm finding myself in law, and it was like a whole new
Right.
transition for my brain. And from there, I just got into school. I made the right connections. I had the right relationships, got through it, took the bar, and got my first job right out of school. And the crazy part about the first job is it went back to music, because at 16 I was in a quartet, and the cellist Tommy, his stepdad Dennis, is a lawyer. And so Dennis had his own practice. And so I knew Tommy for years and kept in touch with the family. We were hanging out. And so when I came out of school, first person I reached out to was Dennis. I said, I got to get my feet wet. I got to get into this thing. And he did a lot of real estate closings, foreclosures, dabbled in some probate. And so the crazy tie-in from music into getting into this real estate law industry was crazy. I mean, from that point, I was able to really get in, see what's going on. And the origin story really happened a year later with probate, but um that was pre 2017. That was like 2016 when this all kind of like went down.
Wow. That's incredible. So do you do anything with music now?
No, I haven't done anything with music. I still got the violin. We had it on in the studio for a long time, but no, you know, I, I'd love to, but you got to practice like three to
Yeah.
four times a day, 3 hours a day to like really keep
Whew.
up the skills. And I've got so much going on, and I'd love to. Maybe one day I'll pick it back up.
Yeah. I spend about 20 minutes doing a scale on my guitar about once a month, hoping that I'll become a rock star. But, 38 years in, I'm not there yet. So
It's good for the campfire. You're
it's
good.
great for the campfire. Yeah. And my daughter loves coming down and banging them around. So,
It's good. It's good.
yeah. So that's fantastic. So, what would you say if you had a message to wholesalers about probate? Like, what would be your one thing that they need to understand to take away when it comes to probate?
Don't leave these on the table. Don't
Mhm.
these are really good, juicy deals that investors keep passing up because they didn't have the right expert. So my best advice to people is really find that expert in that state that you're going to and that you're in. Build that connection, build a relationship with them, stick with them, because that is going to be a really good expert you can lean on when you get these deals.
Yeah.
Because how many people keep leaving these on the table? I've had 4 intro calls, Drew, in the last day, where they said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I found you on Facebook. I found you on Instagram. I mean, we keep coming across these deals and I keep saying no." And one lady the other day, she was like, "I came across 20 of these in the last year and I said no to them." And I'm like, "What?" Yeah, exactly. So my best advice is don't leave these on the table,
Yeah.
get the right expert, connect with the right people. And this is what it's about. It's about really building relationships in our industry.
And you work specifically in Florida.
Yeah.
When are you going to take your practice nationwide? What like I talk I we've a couple we have a couple of mutual friends, but there's somebody on my team who knows you quite well as well, and we talk all the time. And he's always just like, man, it's got another off call with another guy, and I just want to tell him to talk to Al, but he's not in Florida, so he's just like, I don't even know what to say. So like, so what do you say that? Yes, of course you're going to be gracious and tell us there's other lawyers in other states, but what is preventing you from going nationwide?
I've gotten that so much. I think when I got off the hustle harder stage in Milwaukee, some people asked me about that. I was even at another event in Houston, and they said, when are you going to take the bar in Texas? When are you going to take the bar?" I haven't even contemplated that. I haven't even thought about that. It's not even in the vision right now, or
Right.
hasn't been. The thing for me that I've really wanted to do is just slowly find some of these other lawyers in these states to really build connections. Like randomly, this title company had a probate I had to do, and there ended up being a Georgia lawyer on the other side. And so as soon as I saw that, I'm thinking, I got to connect with the guy. From that connection was huge because I've had so many people that are like, Al, you got somebody in Georgia, you got perfect. Go to David. David's great, go there. Or I had another guy, I think he's still practicing in Illinois, like random spots. And I'm like very good about asking like questions and speed because I know how investors work. I know how I work, and that's the standard I look for. It's very difficult. So, um, I don't think the nationwide thing's in, but definitely trying to like find some of these other people in states and have that referral network.
What is the best way to work with you? So say I'm in Florida or I work in Florida. I have active markets in Florida. I know I'm going to run into probate. Would you rather I wait until I run into a probate issue and then come and have a call with you? Or would you prefer investors to have an intro call with you ahead of time and just kind of understand how you operate, know that I know to call Al and everything's set up as soon as I get an issue? Which is best business for you?
How about both? If you're doing high volume deals or just deals in general that keep, you get probates or you found these in the past and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to connect with Al because we keep coming across these, reach out. If you're coming across one now, reach out. Like it doesn't matter what side of it is. At the end of the day, you're eventually going to find these if you're doing these inbound marketings, these deals. They're going to come up. You got to make that connection because when it happens, boom, now you know where to go. And of course, best way is phone number and email al@alnicoletti.com and 904-999-0053. Best ways is that social media is good too. We're on Instagram, Facebook. I have a YouTube channel. Drew, my YouTube channel, it's crazy. We have so much education for investors, for realtors, for people that are finding these deals. Like there's videos that we talk about who to look for, the heirs, no heirs, these situations. Like the YouTube channel is gold for people. So definitely check that out. But feel free, reach out. Mention Drew's name when you reach out. Leadzolo, mention Leadzolo. That you heard us on the podcast, but happy to talk to any of the investors that are coming across these in Florida.
Yeah, and we'll make sure we link all of this information in the bio of wherever you're listening to this. I just think it's such a tremendous resource, and yeah, like it's really funny that I came into this industry really thinking that probate were dead deals, and it's almost scary to think of how many people think that way. So
it's scary and it's a great niche to get into. I really believe that. I've even had a lot of people, Drew, where they were focusing in one market. They were in Georgia, they were in South Carolina, they're in another state, and they're shifting markets to Florida. And they're excited because they know they found it, they have an expert already.
right,
Like that's the power of networking and having pushed the brand as far as I did when I did in 22 and 23. It's like they weren't working in Florida then, but as soon as they're like, we're in Florida, we're going out. It's crazy. It's crazy.
that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. Do you have anything else you want to add? Is there anything we didn't cover that you think everybody should know about?
I think definitely check out the YouTube channel because there's going to
Yeah.
be tons of things there. There's so many things on like what to look for, the best types of leads for probates. I
Oh,
mean, yeah.
let me ask you that because obviously I own Leadzolo. We do paper lead. We don't have a way of filtering for probate. I have no idea. How do people find probate leads? Is that something they can go on like batch leads and like pull a probate list and start calling it, or is it a little more difficult than that?
Yeah, so if you're not finding it through an inbound like Leadzolo, if you're not finding it on the inbound PPL side, the outbound side ends up being like tax delinquencies are great. Because the tax delinquents means that what's happening? Somebody owned it, they can't pay, they forgot to pay, or they're dead. And so that's a distressed lead. Pre-foreclosures, code violations, properties that are about to go up for auction, whether tax deed or foreclosure. Um, even vacant properties. If it's vacant, why is it vacant? You know, like anything you're thinking is like, is this distressed? It's a huge opportunity. But a lot of people love the pre-foreclosures and the tax delinquents because those are true indicators of distress. And we're just seeing so many people finding those.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this was awesome. I really appreciate this conversation. We should have one again.
Oh yeah.
We're actually for anybody listening, we'll dangle it out there, but we're toying the idea of doing live podcasts down in Florida with me and Al sometime in the future, which will be really great. And we'll let all of our listeners know that ahead of time, and maybe they can come out and see it. But otherwise, this has been incredibly informative. So if anybody listening to this got some good feedback or got some great ideas, leave some comments below. Check out Al's YouTube video and contact him if you have any issues with probate in Florida at all. He's your man.
Drew, thank you so much for having me on, man. And it's always so good seeing you and talking about all these things with real estate.
Pleasure as always, Al. Thank you so much.